Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Creating Wealth. And we have our amazing coach and mentor, Robert Allen, in the house. How are you doing?
Oh, excellent. Excellent. So many opportunities.
I know.
So
And
much.
it doesn't matter which market you're in, you can always invest. So, speaking about the market, how does the housing market work? What makes it go up or down? And what's the current situation right now?
Supply and demand. That's it. Period. Supply and demand. It's the economic principle that if things are in limited supply and there's a lot of demand, this will force the prices up, which is exactly what's happened. You know, the pandemic forced builders to not build as quickly as they were building and forced everybody to slow back down again. And therefore, there's just too many buyers. And the buyers is being increased, like the number of buyers in a marketplace. You can get the data on this, but it's anywhere from 10% of the buyers are investors. In some markets, it's 25% of the buyers are investors. So those investors are small-time little guys, and more than likely, the people who are watching this right now will be the onesies and twosies, small players. Eventually, they'll get to be big players, and they can be like BlackRock, which is buying thousands of properties, and so a lot of the smart money has gone towards real estate. Why? Well, let's look at the stock market and what happens to that stock market. It's declined dramatically over the last little while, and by the time somebody sees this, it might be back up again. The point is, it's fluctuating up and down. It's volatile. It's illiquid. It's liquid. That's why it's volatile. So a bad piece of news can make that the market go down immediately. So playing in a liquid, volatile marketplace, investors are a little nervous because, if they make 5, 10, 15, 20% on their money, that's pretty darn good over a long period of time. Warren Buffett, the greatest real estate or the greatest stock market investor in the history of the world, his average rate of return is like 20 to 22%. And that made him a billionaire. You invest 5,000 50 years ago, and you keep making it 20% interest grow. So most investors don't have a stable way of having their money grow. So they need to diversify. So they're now realizing they need to diversify out of the stock market into other assets. And most smart investors are moving into apartment buildings, commercial real estate. It's just what smart investors do. So now there's increased demand from these investors who has increased who's forced the prices to go up. That's what's happened here recently. The prices have just been spiking upwards. What's going to stop that? Well, the interest rates are going to stop that. As the interest rates go up, and a year ago there was a 2 in front of the interest rate for mortgages. Today there's a 5 in front of it. It's doubled in the last year. And guess what's happened to the number of new homes that have been sold in the last month? They have plunged. The number of new homes has dramatically dropped. Why? Because the interest rates are increasing. And inflation is a mess. It's not something you want to deal with. So the interest rates are going to continue to go up, which is going to force sellers to be more creative to sell. This is good news for us, because if a property stays on the market and doesn't sell, like in the 7 to 12 to 15 to 20 days that it usually sells in a hot market, if it extends to 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, 90 days, that means there are more sellers who are remaining on the marketplace. Mm-hmm. They're starting to get a little more nervous. They wish they had taken that offer they got last month, but they thought they could get a little bit more money, and now that deal is no longer there. So they become more highly motivated to sell. So we know that 1%, 2%, 5% of the properties that are available for sale at any time are highly motivated. They have a reason that forces them to sell. And I'm looking for that person. And because the interest rates are going up, it's increasing the numbers of highly motivated sellers. This is good for us, because that means more sellers are going to have to be more flexible. they're going to be open to more possibilities, right? So as I look at a marketplace, I'm going to look at the entire United States marketplace and going to some softwares such as PropStream or Real eFlow or a source that goes to only the major cities that have the real estate listing service, the MLS, the multiple listing service. There is a service that's called Privy, which is a listing of all the properties that are listed through 40, 50 major cities in the United States. And therefore, I get to look at the multiple listing services in 50 cities. Yeah, I get to see what's available for right now. And so these three methods that I just shared with you means that you can sit at your home, at your computer. You don't have to fly to Milwaukee and to check it out. You can look at the entire marketplace. You can zoom in on a city, and you can determine whether that's a good city or not. You can see what the prices are. You can look at a property in Kansas, for example, and there'll be properties there that you can't even believe anybody's selling it for that low. Oh, wow. When compared to California, where you can't even touch something under $1 million. You go to Kansas and it's you're talking under $100,000. And so you go, well, maybe I should go to Kansas. All right. Well, you're going to do the same process whether you're in Kansas or you're in Los Angeles. You're going to evaluate every property because every property is based upon its comparable analysis. In Kansas, there'll be a city, and that city will have property prices. And you can look at what has sold recently by using one of these softwares. And we have our own software that we use where we are able to identify the top 4 or 5 marketplaces we're heavily investing in. Those cities change, by the way. So when you come to us and you say, I want Robert to teach me how to invest with him, guess what? We're going to go to the 5 cities we know are the greatest cities to invest in. And we're going to go deep in those cities and we're going to buy properties in that city. And you and I are going to partner together in this. But if you're doing it on your own, you're going to go to a major software company like the ones I just mentioned to you. And you're going to do your analysis. You'll look at it and you'll see whether or not the value of a $100,000 house is comparable to any other property in that city that is sold. Is that the average? Is that the normal price for a city? And when I go and buy in Los Angeles, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to figure out what's the comps for that city. What have people been paying for properties in that area?
And from what I'm hearing is that you look at the bigger picture of an area instead of just centering on your tiny little city, because maybe there are not that good of deals on your city. But if you expand your view to another city that could be literally right next door, you could find that one deal that you're looking for.
Exactly. And a high price city such as San Francisco, there are surrounding cities that have better deals. And that as property values get really high in a major city like San Francisco, you have to get further and further out in order to be able to get where a person can afford it, right? So you're going to be buying properties in further outs from the major city, so you can afford to buy them. And then as the demand for that city grows, the values and where you bought that property are going to increase. So one of my great friends is a great investor, has bought thousands of properties. He calls it the big dot, little dot syndrome, So I'll look at the big dots in the country and I'll find that there are 100 major metropolitan areas. I'll find a state where the prices are more reasonable than in the big cities, New York City, Boston, Miami, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. I'm going to go into the little dots. I'm going to go outside the big dot. And I'm going to find a property that's lower in price. But there are states where it's hotter. The deals are better. And when you come to us, we'll coach you on that. we'll show you how to do that. When we buy together, you put the money up, we find the deal, we manage the deal, we take care of it for you. Then we know where we want our money to be. We figured out which parts of the country are the best parts of the country, and there are 4 or 5 that are hot. They're the best places to invest. And then this fades, and the prices get too high, and so you have to look at a lot of demographics. So when you're picking the big dot, which is the city that's represented in a state, that's represented in the best place to invest, then you do demographics. You go, what is the future of this city? Where are the best options? Where are the best opportunities for growth? Does this area expanding in growth? Are a lot of new companies moving into this area, or are they moving out? There's some cities where they're moving away. Prices have gotten too high. They can't put their employees up because the prices are too high. They would like to be there, but it's just too expensive, so they move. Mm-hmm. And they move to South Carolina. They move to Florida. They move to other states. And so you need to kind of get an overview of what are the demographics, what are the growth potential for that area.
And what are some of the tools that you have used in the past in your career to find out these demographic information? How do you know if the population is truly growing in that area?
You just go online and you Google it. You can, for example, some real estate agents have really nitty-gritty detailed analysis of a city. For example, San Diego, one of the agent that sold our house, I think her company's called Compass or something like that. She sends me the data. She shows me exactly how many properties are available in every city in the San Diego metropolitan area, into the little dot areas. She shows me how many properties are available for sale, how many days they've stayed on the market, what the average price is, what the median price is. This is a report that she prepares and sends to me. And so if you're finding a realtor, you're putting a realtor on your team, that should be information you want to ask for them. Tell me, what kind of data do you prepare for your clients? And if they don't prepare a lot of data, then go to another agency. Yeah. Find another agent that does that.
That's true.
My agent is fantastic, and when I get this report from her once a month, and I can see where are the hot cities. And I can see where the markets are slowing. I can see that the numbers of days that stayed on the market have gone up from,
the previous report, right?
20 to 30 to 40 to 50 days. That's the preliminary indicator that lets you know we're going from a buyer's market to a seller's market, or vice versa. Right now we're in a seller's market. That means the sellers control. They're the ones that can demand the pricing. A buyer's market is when the sellers can't sell. They're having a hard time. Things are slowed down. There's more flexibility in the seller. So that's going to shift. You're going to go from a buyer's market to a seller's market. And right now we're heading into a seller's market because of the raising interest rates. But that's going to mitigate, where eventually the builders are going to be catching up to the demand. They're going to be building more and more properties. There's going to be more supply. And therefore, just find a realtor who can provide that information for you. And it's usually free.
Oh, yeah. There's so many resources to find this information. And I feel like also if you were to invest in your own city, just going around and talking to a couple of businesses, maybe you can also get a feel of the place as well. And speaking about the demographics, another of the factors that I feel like we should be looking at is also the economic factor of that city. Because in the end, I mean, you're going to have tenants, and you need to make sure that they are able to pay
exactly
whatever you're going to be asking for your rent. So how
growth.
do you go about
finding...
have
growth? And some areas are really inexpensive, into the Midwest, you get into the Ohios and Nebraskas and things like that. You'll find that, some of the, maybe not Nebraska, but Ohio, a lot of people are moving away. They're moving to the Sun Belt. They're moving away from the cold areas. Prices are much, much cheaper there. The question is, can you rent something out in that neighborhood so that you can cover the lower price of the cost of the properties in these areas of the country which are lower, such as Ohio, When you do some research, you find out the properties are really lower. Now, some states have very aggressive Section 8. Section 8 is a government program that lets the government subsidize the rental of a property. So this takes research, and I will tell you that you need to find out the HUD department in that state and find out how strong they are. Some of them are not strong, meaning they let the tenants roll over them. If the tenant misses the payment that they're supposed to be making, they are not aggressively pursuing that tenant. But there are some states that are aggressive with this program, meaning they're gonna check up on every tenant. They're gonna make the tenant is making sure that the payments are made on time, that they're not, and they inspect the properties. So that some Section 8's state programs are extremely professional, and you would think that they would be all the same because it's a government program. It's a federal program, but every state is different. So you need to just double check that. Why? Because you can buy a home in an inexpensive area, an inexpensive state. You buy the house for $75,000-$100,000. You could rent it. Can you rent it out for enough to cover the mortgage payment? Right. Well, some of these Section 8 rental rates are fairly high. And that means that the government will do your policing for you, and they'll make sure that since they're providing the lion's share of the rent that you get to collect, you want to make sure that the government Section 8 program in that state is strong enough. And if it's a weak one, you're going to end up with bad tenants. Now, why Section 8? Well, you don't need to use Section 8. You can rent it out to anybody you want to. But sometimes in some states where the Section 8 program is strong, the rental rates are higher, and therefore your risk is much lower because the tenant is selected by the government. They put the tenant in there. They pay you a higher rent than you would normally get, and then they make sure that it's guaranteed. So this is something you need to consider. See, as we were talking here, there's just so many little rivulets of information, so many little chunks of content that I know that a beginning person just doesn't know. So if you're doing this by yourself and you're trying to make your investments by yourself, this is just not smart. Just don't do that.
Get some help.
Yeah.
There's always so many good mentors that are willing to help. And thank you so much for doing this, because it's super cool to have someone with your experience to be able to share so much knowledge for all of us that are beginner investors to start growing our portfolio even faster. And also that program that you mentioned, I feel like when having the government kind of like as your manager controlling that property, that makes you have way more peace of mind over the investment properties.
If you chose the right state,
that's true.
And so you just check on go to that office in your state, the HUD office. Find out. Tell me about Section 8. How do you police the people that are in it?
Because in the end, the profit that you get from all of these investment properties is with your tenant. As long as you have a tenant that you're totally sure that it's going to keep paying you your rent every single month, then you're all set with your income. But speaking about the rent, how do you know how much to charge for the rent of the property that you have? What's the price rent ratio that you have for these properties?
Whatever the market will bear.
Oh, wow.
So one of the advantages to a hot real estate market we're in, the advantage is since more and more sellers are getting priced out of the market, they have to go somewhere. And they don't want to be in an apartment. It's just a different life in an apartment. They want to have a single family home. They want to rent. They want to be in a normal neighborhood. They want to raise their family in a normal housing relationship. So as the prices of real estate are harder to get, more and more people will be looking for rentals. Therefore, this is going to force rentals to go up because the same problem applies as supply and demand of rents. If there's not enough rental properties for people to fight for, because of scarcity, the rents are going to go up, and that's absolutely what's going to happen. As the higher the property gets, the rental rates are going to go up. This is good. So you just do your research on the marketplace. You check with realtors; they might be able to help you out. You check with rental agencies. See, there are people who do management for properties. So there will be, 50 different companies in your city. And that's what they do. They manage properties for out-of-state owners. You go to them and you say, tell me about your services. I want a manager to manage this for me. I don't want to do it by myself. It's going to cost you, 10% of that revenue, and that's going to go away to some manager. But before you select that manager, you get to question them. What's a house? I'm trying to find a house in the 2,000, 2,500 square foot range, kind of like a traditional home. What's that going to rent for? Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you. They'll say, well, we have 90 properties that we now manage, and the rents are different in different neighborhoods of the city. And you say, okay, well, then if I find a property and before I even buy it, can you tell me what the general rate should be in that neighborhood? Should it be $2,000 a month? Should it be $1,800 a month? Should it be $3,500 a month?
They get to run the numbers for you.
Totally,
Cool.
totally.
Awesome.
So if I were you, I would talk to 5 of the major companies. Mm-hmm. You're a client, as a potential client. Mm-hmm. Have them share that information with you. If they won't share it with you, then just go to another company.
Right.
Just say, if you're not going to tell me, I'm not going to use you, and some of them might be fussy like that. So there's another company just around the corner. Mm-hmm. So that gives you an idea of what the rental rates are in your city, mm-hmm. right? You can look at advertising. You can look at people who are advertising now, and usually it'll be online. Right. So Zillow can sometimes give you information like that. Just do some online research. Find what are the rental rates, the general normal rental rates for Cleveland, for Miami, for Biloxi, Mississippi. Just you'll get to find that out. Now, I like personally. I've often said that you should be buying your first properties within a 50-mile radius of your own home. If you want to lower the risk, you want to rent where you live. And what do you live in Los Angeles or San Diego or San Francisco and the prices are crazy? Then you go to a small dot. You have to go outside. It may be several hours outside of that major metropolis. The prices are going to be lower, definitely going to be lower. Then you can start to do your analysis on how much the rental would be for that marketplace.
Pretty much basing all of these prices on what the market is currently doing. That way you are kind of like also within.
So if you're in a 50-mile radius, if you need to, you might have to expand that 50-mile radius outside your metropolitan area to 100 miles, to 200 miles, The further away you go, the harder it is for you to manage that property. If the seller has a problem, a toilet overflows, or there's a leak in the roof or something like that, if it's 200 miles away, it's a many-hour drive. It's a 6-hour drive for you. Mm-hmm. So the further away it gets, the greater the probability you'll have a problem that you'll need to solve and you don't want to solve it. So I like to keep you closer, but that's changing. That rule that I've given you there, the 50-mile radius, I still believe in it. But now, because of access to online data, which we didn't have when I was doing my heyday of investing, we could go to a multiple listing service and we could look with realtors in any city. We just have to go to that city to do it. Or we'd have to find a realtor who lived in that city, and they would share us that data with the properties that are available in that city if we wanted to go outside of our 50-mile radius. But now I can sit at my home computer and I can look at all the properties in any city, and I can see what the comps are, but right at my home, anywhere. And therefore, it's kind of expanded my rule, which used to be 50 miles. Now it could be 500 miles. It may be in a neighboring state, because the properties in Reno, Nevada are dramatically lower than the properties in San Francisco. What if I buy in Reno? The prices of an apartment building are dramatically lower. Maybe it's okay for me to drive 6 hours to get to Reno. Maybe if I'm marketing a property in Reno, I can still reach the people who are in San Francisco, and I can increase the demand for a property that's, in an area that's a small dot, an area that's way outside the big dot, such as the major cities. So because of online resources that have just recently been available, in the last 5 years, that people have been gathering all this data for us, we get to find out where the foreclosures are nationwide. We get to find out where are the people who are having difficulties with divorces nationwide. In other words, the data has gotten so prevalent, so amazing,
and so much more accessible.
Accessible. You can do it right from your own home.
That's true.
You still have the same problems, which is you're going to have to rent it out. So now you go into other ways of renting, such as you rent on a lease option. So therefore you have a more highly qualified tenant. Tenant wants to stay there, wants to buy it, is willing to give you $5,000 in option money up front. I want an option. I can't afford it yet, but when I do, I want to be able to buy this home. I like this home. So therefore it lowers your rental danger, right? So yeah, you can go a little further away. You can go further out. Yep, you can.
And especially not only because of the online tools, but also having your advice and your knowledge and experience to back us up, we can just invest anywhere, no matter what the market is like.
Exactly.
Thank you so much again,
You're
Robert.
welcome.
And thank you to our audience. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about any of the markets that you're thinking about investing. And we're more than happy to help you out with that, especially having our mentor, Robert, in the house. Thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.